Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock Blog, and I'm here with Adam Balderstone, and we are talking about the 2006 television series Return of Condor Heroes, episodes 3 through 5 today. This is the televised version of the classic Louis Cha Return of Condor Heroes story, and we did the first two episodes last episode, and now we're on to 3 through 5. So before I get into the plot of the first episode that we did, Adam, what was your just general take on the overall flow of events this time around?
I really enjoyed what's been going on. In some ways, it seemed to slow down a little bit in these episodes, but in an effective manner. I mean, I like the way the show is willing to kind of give itself time to breathe at times and give characters some slow moments, which will happen more in the not the third episode, but more in episode 5. I think there were some nice moments where the show kind of slowed down a little bit in a good way. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, what's your feeling on these episodes overall?
I mean, I like these. This is sort of this is they're sort of laying the groundwork. I think I always like sort of the training sequences and things like that in movies. So
Yeah.
I like sort of the exploration of the sect aspect to this part of the story. The plot definitely cranks more into high gear beyond this point, but this is sort of nice foundational material so that you can understand, their relationship before it becomes important in the plot itself. And this is also kind of where, at least from the Zhao Long Nu perspective, the nature of their relationship definitely changes. I think Yangor still doesn't quite see her as a romantic interest. He still sort of views her as his Shifu, as Gugu, and but there's a moment, I forget which episode, but during like maybe the fourth or the fifth, I think it was the fifth episode, where she looks at him and it's clear that she's starting to see him very differently. And this is also a series of episodes where we get the time skip. So I think that's, you get to see the actor who will actually be playing Yangoa through the duration of the show. So, but diving into episode 3, this is the episode where Yangoa begins his training with the sparrows. He has to basically catch sparrows with his hands without harming them. And it's also, back at Chuanzhen sect, Zhao Zhijing loses his position as head disciple, and Zhen Jibing it takes over that position in his place because the masters don't feel that Zhao Zhijing is competent enough or of good enough character. And this is a point where Zhao Zhijing begins plotting his revenge against Yangor, but also you can just see he's a much darker character than he initially appeared, maybe. And he tries to arrange to have Yangor captured, and Lu Qingdu is placed in charge of the task. He doesn't succeed, but there's a moment where Yangor is I think chased in the woods, and the episode sort of ends with Zhao Long Nu explaining their style to him, and that and then we get the big time jump at the end after he's sort of just beginning to master the style, and that's when we sort of see him goofing off in the underground cave system with her. So I don't know. What do you? I might have left out some things, but what did you think of this episode overall?
It's a fun episode. The time jump was a surprise. Certainly, I wasn't sure that would come that soon. But yeah, that took a little bit of adjustment there. The chase scene was well done. That was just some good fun with the monks there. But yeah, I like the interplay back with the Quan Sen with Zhen Jibing, and so they're becoming intriguing characters in their own right.
And then, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, was this the episode where she gave Zebang the antidote, or was that in
Yes,
a?
it was this
Yeah,
episode, and that becomes important because he holds on to that antidote bottle
I
like a
know.
love token. And you can, it's also, I think it's the episode where we really see his obsession with Xiao Long Nu start to become clearly apparent. Um,
Yeah, it's
it's
where I caught on to it certainly.
and it's also, I mean, we've had kind of hints of it, I suppose, but they've been pretty vague up to this point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they kind of went past me if there were earlier
yeah.
ones. This is the one where it really,
I
really
think
hit me.
I think you had to know it's coming to kind of understand, like, oh,
Mm.
that look was because of, Um, but this was also the episode where Yango was formally inducted into Ancient Tomb Sect, and so he kowtows before an image of the sect leader Chao Ying, and he spits on an image of Wang Changyong.
That's
Um,
right.
and so it's it you know it's a very number one, these every sect's a little bit different, like you saw in Brave Archer, where they were there's something similar where they spit on the person being inducted as the leader. This is sort of a
Mhm.
twist on that, where they're spitting on the the head of a rival sect. And uh,
Yeah, well, this sect feels very. A lot of things about this sect feel like they're made very much in reaction to other things rather than for their own sake. It's kind of my impression with this sect.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that, and you know, it's Yanguo. When he's about to take her as Shifu, he says, "Okay, I'll take you as Shifu, but I don't want to call you Shifu because I hate that dirty Taoist Zhao Zhijing, and if I'm cursing him at night, I don't want to accidentally curse you by using the word Shifu, so I want to call you Gugu." Well, which means auntie, and so she agrees. She's kind of Zhao Longnu's strict with him, but she's also fairly lenient in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And part of it is, I think, she just doesn't have that much attachment to a lot of the things that other people in the martial world might have attachments to, and so she just, it's just a name, so fine. And he decides to call her Gugu, and this becomes important in the story because what he calls Xiao Long Nu at any given point is kind of meaningful in the in terms of like what it like what kind of relationship they have. So that, I mean, I think there were a couple of other key things. There was a sparrow scene, which I thought was kind of a cool training sequence, and I liked how that was
Yeah.
shot. I liked that they did
The
it like behind it.
silhouettes.
What was that?
Yeah. The silhouettes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. So I thought it was a good episode, and I like that we finally get to see the guy who's going to play Yangoa the whole way through. Now, out of curiosity, what was your initial impression of him right out of the gate? Did you have any?
Well, I mean, it's, he basically hasn't matured in any real way between during the time jump, and so like, an adult acting the way that the earlier actor would kind of it could be a little grating in a
Yeah,
certain way, and I kind of feel like you know moments where Yongo would be scared or something like that. I felt like that kid was really good at kind of getting the underlying fear that
mm-hmm.
character had, and I don't feel like the adult actor handles that aspect of the character as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, to jump a couple episodes ahead, when he's scared when they fall down into the secret chamber and stuff, it's like he's just kind of doing it as kind of a silly kind of scared. I feel
Yeah,
like when the kid would play being scared, you felt like this is a scared little kid, and
yeah.
so that would be my main criticism of him. But on the whole, I'm warming up to him. I think he's fine in other respects.
Yeah, and I only mention it because I do know people who sometimes point out the grading nature of these early episodes with him, and
Mhm.
so I think if people are watching this show along with this, one thing to keep in mind is the character will develop and change over the course of the series, and so this is like the starting point, and so I think the actor is sort of just kind of working with the starting point, knowing that he has to get to
Yeah.
a certain a certain end result. And by the time you get to the end, the character development is worth it. But I have seen people comment on this phase
Yeah,
of the
and I
character's
don't want to make
development.
it sound like it's terrible and I hate it and I'm angry about this character. I'm just since you brought it up though,
Yeah.
that would be the main thing I think he's not quite getting right with the character is kind of the underlying fear, you know. I but yeah, on the whole though, I am very much warming up to him. I think he has good chemistry with with his goo goo there too and so on and yeah it's I don't know I'm fine I think like I said I think as the character matures I think I'll be completely fine with the
Hmm.
character.
And then in the next episode opens with Zhao Long Nu playing a guzheng, and she's playing a song. I think they call it Chi Ao. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah,
But Yango has heard the poem or the lyrics of this song before, and he explains that it's basically like praising a man with jade features, like who's like whose features look like polished jade. I think was the wording he used, and it was taught. And I think the he mentions that the words were taught to him by Huang Rong,
he did,
who's in a way
yes.
kind of his other Gugu. She's Auntie Rong in the book. So, um, there's an interesting sort of contrast between those two characters.
Yeah.
Um, but
Definitely.
but but Zhao Long Nu, mentions that the grand teacher played this song, and Yango is like, oh, I wonder what man she was thinking of when she played
Yeah.
this, because and so it's just a minor scene, but it kind of gives you an indication of things to come, because a lot of what Zhao Long Nu and Yango are doing in the cave is learning more about the founder of their sect, who is Lin Xiaoying, I believe, and the founder of Chuanzhen sect, Wang Chongyang, who you saw in Brave Archer. He was the guy who had mastered the Yin manual,
Yes.
and so and Zhu Batong's instructor. But now he's kind of a distant figure of the past that Yango despises, because he was the rival of their grandmaster. And so Yango continues his training, and he masters this technique. I've seen it translated a bunch of different ways. I personally like the name Fist of Beauties. I think it's got like a nice ring to it. But I've also seen it done as Beautiful Fists, and he basically, what we learn is that he completes phase 1 of the training, which is learning the basic moves of their sect,
Hmm.
and now she wants him to learn the basics of Chuanzhen sect, and then they can sort of progress to Jade Maiden. But because her own teacher died when she was pretty Zhao Long Nu was like 14 when her teacher died, her training is incomplete, so they have to do this all together. They're sort of in the same boat after this point. And so they have a wall that depicts Chuanzhen style, but it only has the moves. It doesn't have the underlying theory behind it, which is sort of an important point in these stories of the Condor Heroes trilogy. Sort of having the theory behind the movements. And so Yanguo, because that Taoist that he hates, Zhao Zhijing, never taught him martial arts. He did at least teach him some of the principles of Chuanzhen sect, and so he knows like half. He knows like one half of what they need to know, and so they realize, oh, we just need to go and get the other half from one of these other Taoists, and they decide to, poor Lu Qingdu at this point. They decide to go after him and get and force him to tell them the rest of the theory, and Yango sort of traps him in a river and threatens him with bees, and he gets the remaining theory, and so then they begin. They're able to progress to Jade Maiden, but to do Jade Maiden, they realize that they, because it generates so much heat in the body, they have to train naked, and
Yeah.
this is incredibly inappropriate for a man and a woman in this setting, and they both realize this, and so they try to come up with a solution. Initially, Zhao Longlun was like, you know what, we don't need to do this. It's we're not going to be fighting people. Who cares? And and Yangor's like, no, I have to get revenge for Granny
Yeah,
Sun.
he wants
And
to be
yeah,
fighting people. None
yeah.
of this. We're just going to hang out in the tomb and contemplate stuff. Nope.
So so he finds a secluded spot outside where the flowers will obscure their nudity, and where other people supposedly won't see them. And they train in the wilderness. But wouldn't you know it, Genji Bing is who's been pining for Zhao Longnu, is in the area, and he's actually being followed by Zhao Zhijing, who's trying to get his position back as head disciple, and they happen upon them, and a fight breaks out, and Zhao Longnu is hurt because this disrupt the just the pause disrupts her like she's trying to manipulate chi flow through her body, and I think she gets some variation of fire disruption or something that causes her to cough up blood. And
Yeah. Before this scene started, she talked about, we can't be interrupted at the
yeah,
crucial moment. And
yeah,
it's like, oh, okay,
you
okay,
will
we're
be
gonna,
interrupted at the crucial
you will
moment.
be interrupted.
and uh and so and so Yango is furious, and he fights with the Taoists, and he's basically about to kill them, but he convinces, and honestly, he should have killed them at this point. That is something that we will learn down the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Zhao Longnu tells him not to, and so he doesn't. And he gets them to vow not to tell anybody. Now, what did you? The wording of the vow was and the vow, as stated by Zhao Zhijing, not the other guy, is that if a fifth person discovers this, like, I won't live to see another day, or something like that. So, and in the book, I think the way that they phrased it was, I promise not to tell a fifth person. There are 4 people here who know. I won't tell a fifth. So just, I'm not going to say anything, but just note the wording of the promise and the vow, for future reference.
Yeah. It was a very, very specific kind of wording. I can see a number of ways you could kind of wriggle through that one.
And so Yango ends up, letting them go, and then he takes Zhao Longnu back into the cave to help her heal. And she is dying, and she realizes that her vow to Granny Sun is now in peril, because she said that she was going to take care of Yango for the rest of her life, or forever, and her life is coming to an end. So she says, "Okay, I need to kill Yango," and she starts chasing Yango through the caves, and he runs out. And this is, I think, the scene that you were talking about with the fear, where he's kind of like, it's kind of played for laughs. He's kind of like running back and forth, sort of conflicted, like, oh no, Zhao Longnu is Gugu is gonna kill me, Gugu is gonna kill me.
Yeah, this is one of the scenes,
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely.
And,
It doesn't land quite as well, but I think it's more the scene in the next episode was more what I was talking about.
okay. But anyways, he has these conflicted moments where he ultimately decides, you know what, like, she's given me this, not that she gave birth to him, but she's given him this life. She trained him, and she's sort of made him into the person he is, so she can take it if she wants to. And he goes back, and he's fully committed to the idea of dying. But Li Mochu and her disciple Hong Lingbo have arrived, and they they hold him at sword point, and Li Mocho wants the Jade Maiden manual pretty badly, and so the episode ends on a cliffhanger. I don't know that we'll get into to what follows in the next episode, but what did you think of this episode?
Yeah, this was a great episode. I mean, we get, early on we get the kind of comedy of him getting the information, with the bees and so on, and then we get, some great training sequences in here as well. But yeah, and I mean, it's nice to see Lee Mochu actually getting into the plot again, because I mean, we get her right at the beginning of the series, and she's kind of faded out a bit. And yeah, she's a very, very intriguing character in her motivations. That's certainly the case.
Yeah, she's very
And,
stagey. Like she kind of is a figure who can stroll into the
yeah.
screen and you know who she is. It's like Vader. It's like you see the cape and the helmet and you know who you're dealing with, and she's kind of that type of character. You see like the purple
Yeah.
robes and the fly whisk, and you know, okay, we're in trouble. Um,
Yeah, and
and
she's just like another piece of the puzzle too into what this sect's all about. I mean, a lot of this episode is kind of learning more about the sect itself. Like you said, the whole song thing at the beginning, and I liked Yang Gao figuring that out. It was a very kind of insightful little thing for him to pick up on there. It just gave his character a little bit more intelligence there because it being usually the brash kind of character.
yeah, he has these moments of insight like that. He's pretty smart, which is I think that's one of the issues that sometimes the early depictions of this character in these episodes it obscures that a little bit.
Hmm.
But also the character's unique enough that he is kind of wild and unorthodox, so it's a difficult balance to walk. But
Yeah, well, actually, that now you bring that up, that's kind of interesting because him being unorthodox on the whole means you'd have an insight, like noticing something like, it's kind of an inappropriate thing he's noticing. He
yeah,
picks up on, oh, she's thinking dirty thoughts.
yeah.
That's so it really fits with his character.
And the other thing I liked too is I liked the whole, we only know like half of the formula. Now we have to go get the other half. It was something that you could
Yeah,
totally use in like a role playing game where
definitely.
it was a cool little like a piece of the puzzle that they have to sort of obtain. So yeah, I thought it was a nice sort of uh, foundation building episode. I think is sort of how I would describe it. And you got glimpses of intriguing things and parts of the sect. This is sort of where you're really learning about their sect, and so.
Hmm.
And again, we get in the next episode, Lee Mocho arrives, and it's kind of cool that she's, it's not that she's just some bad guy from outside the sect. She's part of the sect, and so
Yeah,
it's a
she's another piece of
complicated,
the puzzle.
yeah. It's and so there is sort of there's occasionally these moments of mutual respect as just members of the same organization. You know, Lee Mocho is pretty quick to sort of go the other direction as soon as her
Yeah.
will is thwarted, but there are moments. So the next episode is basically this is an episode of them running away from Lee Mocho a lot of the time.
Exactly.
They're running away, and part of the problem is Zhao Longnu is injured, but not just that, she's also not as skilled as Lee Mocho. So it's Lee Mocho's cultivation is a bit higher than her, and so they're really kind of at a disadvantage at this stage in the story. And Zhao Longnu decides to collapse. I think they were called the Dragon Stones in this version of it, the Dragon
Yeah.
Rocks. Basically, there's a suicide switch in the tombs where you pull a lever and it seals the tombs up forever. So you're trapped in there, and anybody else who's in there is trapped, but there's no way out. Or so we're told. There's no way out. You'll find this a lot. You're going to encounter a lot of things where a rule is established and there's no way to break it, except there is this exception that is found down the road. So that's a fairly common thing that happens through the story.
Like the
Um,
exception of not being able to leave the tomb because of your oath, but
yeah.
hey, there's the one rule where it lets you leave the tomb.
Yes, yes, and so we'll get to that one because that's a very important plot point. But yeah, so they collapse the stones. They end up in order to collapse the stones, they have to fight with they sort of fight with Lee Mocho, and and uh, and they end up in this situation where she defeats them and ties them to a tree, and and throws them in the water. And because of the orientation of their bodies on the tree, like he's on one side, she's on the other, one of them can get air and one of them has to be below the water. So it's this perfect situation to test their love because, whoever's willing to die for the other one, basically. And they kind of sort of fight to and again, they're not really lovers at this point, but they have I think at this stage, it's clear that that's developing, and that Yangor at least has very strong feelings of devotion towards her as his Gugu. And so he's willing to die for her is what happens in this scene. He plunges himself below the water, and Lee Mocho actually has to pull them out because he would have died if she didn't intervene. And she's actually kind of impressed by the fact that Zhao Longnu has found a man who is willing to die for her, because their whole thing is that men are terrible and are fickle in nature and will always disappoint you, is kind of the and Lee Mocho has learned this herself. That's her whole character, is she had this bad experience with her lover who left her for another person, and so she tells Zhao Longnu, well, since you found a man to love you, you can leave the sect. That's one of our rules. If you found a man willing to die for you, then you can leave the sect. And she even, there's also a moment where she checks Zhao Longnu's virginity dot. They have these dot on their wrists that are like gecko cinnabar dots, and they disappear if you have sex. So it's sort of like a genre convention, and you also see it in Heaven Sword Dragon Saber, except they put the dot on their forehead, and so we learn in this scene that she still has hers, and that Lee Mocho still has hers as well, which is kind of important to Lee Mocho's character. But she says, you two should leave the tomb and go live as lovebirds, and and it seems like she's sort of softening to them, but then she immediately, as soon as Zhao Longnu is like, no, we're trapped here forever, and there's, you're never going to get the Jade Maiden manual, Lee Mochu goes on the attack again. And so they end up, oh, go ahead.
So, yeah, she's got this she's interesting. She's got this kind of almost crazy sentimental streak where it's like, she is like this ruthless villain, but then something touches her heart, and she kind of, it goes back to the whole handkerchief thing during the beginning of the series. It just seems it's an interesting character quirk for her to have there.
Well, and it is, like I keep saying, it's very operatic, so you have to sort of engage it at that level of, this is very melodramatic and very sort of everything sort of put out front. And in the books, a lot of times when she shows up, she's actually singing and crying at the same time. And she's singing this song, "Oh mortals, what is love?" And it's got this long set of, and you just keep encountering this poem over the course of the story that Lee Mocho is telling. And so, she's very sentimental about love. And so it's exactly like you're saying. So they end up running away from her again, and they find they hide inside of a coffin, and Zhao Longnu is still injured, so she's like, well, I'm gonna die, and so they see that there's writing on top of the coffin, and it hints at the existence of another technique inside the sect that was brought here by Wang Chongyang after the death of their master, and is a counter to their technique. So it's a counter to Jade Maiden, and it's also, it just so happens to be right underneath the coffin. There's a panel, the coffin slides open, and they find a hidden chamber where this technique is written on the wall, and this is the Nine Yin manual, which becomes really important over the course of this story, and especially in Heaven Sword Dragon Saber. And there's also a map leading outside of the sect. And one point I did gloss over, at one point in the course of all this, Yangor gives his own blood to Zhao Longnu to help her survive. And so as they're looking at the map and saying, oh, we got to make sure we got to seal that door so Lee Mocho doesn't arrive. Lee Mocho shows up, and it's this great scene where she's like in front of this light behind her, and it's just really well shot. She looks really ferocious and terrifying, and but they all agree to sort of work together to leave the ancient tomb, because so they leave the tomb, and as they sort of hit the waterfalls that are sort of rushing from the exit, Lee Mocho says she can't swim, and it's kind of weirdly done in the show. Like, I don't know if you thought that was confusing the way that they shot it, but basically he has to rescue her from the water.
Yeah, it wasn't entirely clear, and it seemed like her disciple couldn't swim either, but that wasn't clearly mentioned. But I don't know. It was. I got the gist of it.
But they rescue her, and it also, I think, Yangoa, as he's sort of hitting her back and getting the water out of her lungs, he taps one of her meridians because she's about to do something, and I think that paralyzes her. But the way it was shot, it wasn't 100% clear to me that that's what he actually did. So,
I saw him tap the meridian, but I didn't know if that was like a healing thing or what. So yeah, if it was paralyzing her, that puts a whole different spin on it.
I wasn't 100% sure because of the way it was shot, and I couldn't remember exactly how it went down in the book. But I think that it looked to me, because normally when they paralyze people, it's usually the 3-point tap on the chest.
Yeah.
But this was a 1 tap to the back. But again, Yangoa did learn from Wu Young Feng, who does the meridian things all backwards. So I don't know, maybe. But either way, I think he did do something to sort of prevent her from moving, but I'm not 100% sure. But basically they say, okay, we're going to go now, and we'll we'll leave you here. And she pretty much has to accept it. And Li Mocho goes back to her own residence, and she discovers that her disciple, Lu Shuang, the other disciple, not the one that was traveling with her, has stolen her 5 poison manual. And Lu Shuang is one of the girls that is the girl that she abducted in the very first episode. So one of the daughters of her former lover. And in this, I don't know, I think in the book, Lu Shuang has a leg issue, like Li Mocho damaged her leg when she first abducted her. I don't know if that's the case in this series or not, because we haven't seen her yet. And Zhao Longnu and Yangoa, they build a house in the woods, and they talk about what their future holds and what they're going to do, and they decide that they're going to master the 9 Yin manual, and after that they'll venture forth into the world. And you can tell Zhao Longnu's a little bit nervous because she's never left the ancient tomb. And in all honesty, it's understandable because they've been living this life together where outsiders haven't really been interfering with their relationship. And who knows what can happen when they start to meet more people and they interact with the world. And all they really do know is like Li Mochu and Chuan Zhen. So she doesn't want to get off this mountain.
Yeah, it's not the best experience she's had with outsiders so far. And all her suitors that used to come by, which probably didn't give her a great impression of the outside world either.
But we get the seed of an important plot here, which is Yangoa is very curious about the outside world, and Zhao Lu wants to stay inside the tomb, and this becomes sort of a point of contention in their relationship.
Yeah,
and, we get a lot of sort of those kinds of seeds planted here with various things. So those were the 3 episodes. What was your thought on this episode? Did you?
This was a really nice episode. And I mean, I mentioned before, the show being willing to slow down a bit. I thought, the whole coffin scene and everything was in a largely kind of frantic, exciting, chase-heavy episode. It was kind of nice just having this contemplative talk between them for a while, until the point where they discover the writing and stuff. It was just a very nicely paced episode, I thought.
And this was also a very important episode because after she and Li Mochu trade stances, and then they flee, and she grabs Yangoa and flees with him through the caves. And that's where she asks him, do you like me? And again, It sounds a little silly, but my understanding, I don't know Chinese, so this could be totally wrong. But there was a blog called Wushu World, and the woman who did the blog, she did a breakdown. Unfortunately, Wushu World's no longer in existence, but she did a breakdown of all the different words for like in Chinese that can be used in like a romantic or friendly context, and there are different degrees of like, is my understanding, and so it's not like, it doesn't necessarily correlate to the "do you like me" sort of thing that might sort of it might sound kind of high school like when you but
do you like me or do you like me?
Yeah. But I think that the degrees of meaning give it a different tone, is my understanding. I don't, again, I'm way out of my league on this, but just to sort of explain if people encounter that. I think there's more to it than the subs often indicate.
Yeah, I don't know. It worked for me. I wasn't having any real
Yeah,
issue with it myself.
there's. I think in this scene it wasn't, but it comes up in a lot of these shows. You'll see them use that word a lot in the subs, and
Yeah.
it'll sometimes be almost exactly like you would see in a high school, like '80s movie or something. And I think it doesn't. I think they're going for something different. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but anyways, she asks him, is there another girl who treats you as well as me? And he kind of pisses her off by saying, well, I'll be nice to whoever's nice to me. But
Yeah.
but then she softens up and she makes him vow to not ever have another woman in his heart. And this is an important vow. Like, I mean, it's easy to miss in the crazy sort of chases through the caves. But he basically says, I'll kill myself if my heart changes. And so, it's an important moment. But this is where Zhao Long Nu is definitely falling in love with him. And he's still sort of thinking of her in terms of Gugu. So they're not on the same page exactly. And that, this will lead to some complications, but eventually, we'll see where things go. So yeah, so I don't know, any other thoughts on these episodes or anything we encountered today?
No, I mean, it was kind of an interesting break point where we wrapped things up. I mean, we didn't choose these 3 episodes with specific intent, but it felt like a really clean 3 episode arc there, ending with them at the house and Imochu looking for her manual, and it just felt like, wow, it was like they kind of formed a coherent movie as 3 episodes. So yeah, I enjoyed this block very much.
Yeah, I think this is like this is a nice 3 episodes, and I think that like you said, they're kind of like one concrete block, and now we're sort of going to get to their to sort of a little bit of the world outside of the ancient tomb. And I mean, and I'm not going to spoil anything now because people might be watching the series, but I will say there are things coming up that are not for the faint of heart, and I don't know exactly which episode, but in the upcoming episodes are going to be some things that can be tough to watch, so people should just be mindful of that going in if they're following along. And again, we're watching the 2006 version of the show. This is a version that I like. Another one that I would recommend is the one that was done in the early 80s. And there's a lot of people really like the one in the 90s, but I have not been able to find that with English subs, so I don't know. I'm sure it's out there somewhere with English subs, but I've had terrible luck finding it. So I don't know. Is there anything else you want to add, or are we covered for
No,
now?
I think I've covered it really.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
but
right. So we'll be back on Friday with New Dragon Gate Inn. This is the '90s sort of remake of the classic King Hu movie, but this one is a Shui Hark film, and we're going to be back on with many other things. Hopefully we'll have some more session logs up, and me and Adam will be back on in a few days probably with the next 3 episodes. So all right, until then, we will talk to you later.